I saw a story on the fandc.com that our buddy Lou DiPietro wrote, and it was about Eric Bickle of the Junkies. This must have been on yesterday's show or maybe this morning. It was written today, and he said the exact words of our own Eric Bickle used were just short of bust proof as he whispered that, but instead vocalized, "My guy is not going to miss." But it's a topic definitely worth hoping for. Is Jayden Daniels a lock to be great? I guess this was a conversation the Junkies were having. The point being that EB has kind of seen enough, that he's ready to write in pen that Jayden Daniels is the answer. The search is over. Like, send the helicopters home, call off the dogs. We have found what we were looking for. Jayden Daniels is going to be the long term solution for Washington. And while there's no real need to come to that conclusion right now, like there's no rush.
Sure, there's no gavel.
I'm just curious if that's how people are feeling already at this point, or if that's a minority opinion. And I figured we could take the temperature of our listeners. For the first time today, we'll open up the MGM National Harbor listener lines. 800-636-1067. They're wide open. 800-636-1067. Just on your confidence in Jayden Daniels. Because I think two things can be true. One, all reports are extremely positive, and they should be. I'll just speak for myself, having gone out to practice a few times and seen him. I was super impressed, between really like immensely impressed and blown away, depending on the day. And then the preseason games have also gone exceptionally well. I think he's 12 of 15 passing. So that's all true. And the most important stuff, as we keep saying, is the non-football part of it that's not on the field. The stuff that we don't see that we're being told he's doing at a really, really high level. The studying, bonding with his teammates, acting like a normal guy, all that. But the second part that I think is also true is he hasn't really been asked to do anything in games yet. He's being asked to throw the ball around the line of scrimmage. He made the one deep throw that was unbelievably pretty on a play he checked into, but it was kind of man coverage when his receiver won, and he dropped it in the bucket, which was awesome. But if you look at his average depth of target or just how quickly the ball's coming out, those numbers on average in a very small 15 throw sample are not what the NFL season looks like statistically. He's throwing in sub 2 seconds. It's going to be 2.5 seconds. The A dot of 5.5 would have been the lowest in the league last year. So my point is there's a lot more coming that's more difficult than what we've seen. And it's probably aggressive or too early to just say, I don't need to see any more. The truth is somewhere in the middle. But I will say that my confidence in him is growing all the time. And I feel better about him than I did weeks ago. But that's what I want to tap into.
Yeah, to me, I think there are two discussions, and I'll get to it. For me, just a Jayden Daniels diagnosis. He has nearly every attribute and checks nearly every box of what I would want, prototypical with the position, right? You already said it. The study habits, the off the field, the dedication, not just part-time, not just for Instagram, not just for, a TikTok here or there, but it's a real thing. That's a 24/7 commitment that you can't ask for anything more. Physical talent is there. I mean, to me, the only thing I would change is I'd give him 20 extra pounds of frame and potentially, hopefully, make him slightly more durable. Other than that, prototypical height, speed, athleticism, throwing arm, accuracy, anticipation, coverage, reading ability, everything that you would want in a quarterback, he has the skill set to start it. So that's number one. How confident am I that they've solved it? How could you be confident yet, to your point? And here's the thing that I would add. There are a million guys. That's not true. Less than that. But so many first-round quarterbacks that had every pedigree, that had every spring practice, they were incredible. Every training camp, they were incredible. Every preseason, they were incredible. And a million things have derailed them. Whether it's an injury, whether it's something nagging, whether it was bad coaching, whether it was the fact that they just weren't ready for the spotlight, whether that a defensive coordinator hit them so many times that they finally went and crumbled. I mean, the stories of guys that started off great and ended up doing absolutely next to nothing that are punchlines is comical. We have no idea what's going to happen ultimately. But again, for me, I love the kid. I wanted them to draft him, and I'm excited that he's the dude. I've seen everything that confirms my priors about how talented and how good of a person he is, and he's the right person to get this best opportunity. To me, how confident am I? I don't know if we're doing a 1 to 10, probably a 5. And the biggest knock against it, one, is his size. That's the thing I've always been scared about. But number two, I don't think they did a very good job of surrounding him with talent to make it easy for him. I think they lowered his ceiling potentially. I look at some of the guys like Justin Herbert who hit the ground running, and would you look at that? There's a Pro Bowler, there's a star, and there's Austin Eckler right behind him. Duh. He has the best rookie season that anybody's ever had as a quarterback. You look at CJ Stroud. Now we know that some of these guys were ballers in waiting, and they worked really, really hard to surround him with a great offensive line and weaponry. They didn't do that here. They're taking their time, which sounds great, but I think they lowered what, I think some of the potential there to, you make it easy on a guy at first, and then he builds and builds and builds and becomes a superstar. I think they're kind of making it harder here unnecessarily.
I think there have been some guys who had it really, really hard from a personnel standpoint. Justin Fields in Chicago comes to mind, among others. And now that's the in vogue thing to say when it's not great. But there's a big difference between being okay, which is what Washington's skill group is, in my opinion, and bad or doing a bad job. Robert Griffin in 2012 broke records, was the Rookie of the Year award winner. It was an offense no one had ever seen before, and I know that it went sideways eventually, but it was an unbelievable year by all accounts. Number one offense, number one yards per play, number one rushing, number one passing yards per play. His most targeted receiver that year was Josh Morgan. He was out of football soon thereafter with, had broken ankle he had played with, coming back from. Santana Moss, who was 34 years old, was the third most targeted receiver. Leonard Hankerson, who did not go on to have
Garcon was the design, but got hurt in week 1.
Yeah, Garcon played 10 games, and he in those 10 games, he was pretty good. He averaged like 4 catches and 60 yards per game for Washington that year. But Morgan, Garcon, Moss, Hankerson, Logan Paulson, those were the most used receivers. So I disagree with this idea that it's got to be the Chicago Bears this year, where they have the best 3. I think this is plenty good enough if you're special and if you're an elite player like Jayden Daniels is. But having said that, to me, it's not even that I'm like dubious or skeptical of the year ahead from a skill group standpoint. I do have some questions about the line, and I want to see that come together. I just think there's a difference between excitement, which everyone should be feeling, and the confidence when you're saying, I've seen it. There's nothing else to see. We haven't seen anything yet. How could there be nothing else to see? Because some wide receiver screens and some quick outs went well. You've got the whole riddle solved. He has not yet thrown a ball in the middle of the field, which is one of the big statistical knocks, remember, from the college resume. He threw a pop pass essentially to a tight end on a little read option look. But I mean, an in-breaking kind of drop back game, middle of the field throw where you got to fit a ball between defenders. Haven't really seen it. It's going to come in time, and I'm sure he'll do it at a high level because he's done everything else at a high level. But my point is, all the stuff that we wondered about, can you avoid sacks in the drop back game? Can you throw the ball middle of the field? Are you going to avoid contact? Those 3 questions still have not been answered, and we really haven't even seen any even indication of what that's going to look like. So I don't know how anyone could already kind of have their mind made up when I heard that, like, oh, it's sold, it's over. You go back to like Sam Howell against the Ravens. Remember how good he looked in that preseason game? I also can't help myself but thinking all the rookies have been awesome. Bo Nix has been incredible. Maybe Bo Nix is going to be a superstar. He's 24. He's about to be 25. He's like an 800-year-old rookie. Played 8,000 college games. He might be really good.
He's with a great offensive mind. It's Drew Brees-esque. Right. It's a good fit.
It's very possible that he's awesome, and so is Penix, and so is McCarthy, and so is Williams, and so is Drake May. But my point is, so far everyone's looking good. It's more likely than not that eventually there's going to be a couple of guys that aren't actually what they look like right now. So I'm not trying to pour cold water or anything. I'm very excited, but there's no race to crown him. There doesn't need to be a sprint to say, write it down in pen, we got our guy. Let's go to Mike, who's in Ashburn on Grant and Danny. How are you, Mike?
Good, guys. How are you?
Come in.
I couldn't agree with you guys anymore. This day and age, everybody wants it to be automatic and right away, and it's got to be the end of it. Nobody gives anything any time. He's had nobody around his feet. He's had very little pressure on him, very little blitzes. I mean, he hasn't come from behind yet. I mean, there's so many things, like you guys said, that, I just think everybody's just hoping so much that he is, that they're talking themselves into it, and they're really setting people up for failure, because if you think that much already, it could only go down from there, because, how is he going to be when he gets in the fire? And of course, he's studying, he's coming in early. He's supposed to. He's a rookie. He doesn't know what he's doing yet. That's what he's supposed to be doing. And I know other quarterbacks don't do that, but they make that out to be like he's doing something so special by coming in early and leaving late. Like, you're supposed to. You're the franchise quarterback. So I think it's way too early. We've seen nothing yet. And I think everybody just get out of the day and age of instant gratification and instant instant good quarterback like that we want to have because we're talking ourselves into it too early.
I think it's a great call.
Thank you, buddy.
The only pushback on people being excited about how hard he's working is it's notable because they've had young guys here who didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Not all young guys do that. And your point is, well, you should. And I agree with you.
You definitely should.
And the really good ones do it. But not everybody does. And we've seen that here, where within a couple of weeks they knew, this is not what it looks like for a franchise quarterback from a work standpoint. And so it's just a prerequisite that you know he's got, right? It's like when you're in the classroom and you're sitting down and the teacher asks you, did you take this course last year like you were supposed to? And we go around the room and there's a bunch of guys that didn't. They're going to stay there now, but they're screwed. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And the guy that took the course, at least you have a chance to do well in my class.
I had to take an international politics class, that some sort of thing. And the only one that fit into my schedule, half the class spoke Russian. And I didn't.
Ooh.
I sat through that first class and went to the professor afterwards. I was like, listen, I have to take it to graduate. I can't do another schedule because of baseball. What do I do? And he's like, I think you might have a really hard time.
I think that's one of the most helpless, lonely feelings in the world that I've ever had.
Yeah.
I always say pitching when you can't throw a strike and the whole ballpark's watching you and angry.
Mm-hmm.
You've now walked 3 in a row and it's 3-1.
They're all chirping you.
You might walk a run home. Like there's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to go. We're all watching. Horrible feeling. For me, the closest thing I think I've ever had in terms of just that loneliness, you're sitting in a room. For me, it was Spanish class at George Mason University, whatever level it was. But everybody's talking Spanish, and I have no idea what anybody's saying.
Don't call me. Don't call me.
And I'm just waiting to hear my name called. It's a terrible, terrible feeling.